Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the, I'm not turned on, am I? Thank you. There you go. Better? Better. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the March 11th, 2019 meeting of the Lincoln City Council. I'd like to invite you all to join me as we do a pledge of allegiance to the flag, followed by a moment of silent meditation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I think we'll start off today with our Mayor's Award for Excellence. Mr. Mayor, would you help us, please?
I'd be delighted to help you.
Thank you. I need help.
The Mayor's Award for Excellence is this time around for the month of February, and it's being presented to Sandy Lutz, who is the Aging Services Supervisor, an Aging Services Supervisor with Aging Partners. And she's worked for the city since 2002. Director Randy Jones nominated her in the category of productivity. Sandy had supervised the Medicaid waiver program for many years until she took over as supervisor of the Community Activities and Service Division in 2017. And then there was a subsequent transition in managers in 2018, and Sandy volunteered to again take on the medical waiver program in addition to the second program. The change added 23 staff members and a $2.8 million budget to her responsibilities. Randy said Sandy addressed regulatory gaps and improved the performance of the Medicaid waiver team. During her entire time supervising the program, Sandy kept expenses down and produced a net return of $283,000. Randy said her leadership has led to a significant improvement in quality and improved accountability with the state of Nebraska with respect to the Medicaid waiver program. So it's my pleasure to present Sandy Lutz with the Mayor's Award of Excellence for February. Please join me in congratulating her for her hard work and for her commitment to the city of Lincoln. Sandra?
I've had the pleasure of working with Sandy now for 3 years at Aging Partners, and she has this real unique talent. She's talented in the regulatory and technical side of the business, but the other side is she's a true humanitarian and makes sure that our clients are first and foremost in our work. This Medicaid waiver program that Sandy has taken back under herself and increased her responsibilities tremendously we serve on average 800 of the most frail low-income seniors in our community, and they require a lot of services. She has high expectations for her staff, making sure that our customers' needs are met. As we look to the future in terms of our future innovation, resourcefulness, and growth, Sandy will be an excellent continued member of our leadership team. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mayor, very much for the award.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank you for the nomination, and thank you for actually receiving this. I'm very flattered, I'm very surprised and humbled. But I do want to stress that this is not my award. It's not my recognition. It's people sitting here in the audience. If you'd stand up, Joyce Kubitschek and Kay Wenzel,
please.
Denise.
Stand. We need you.
Dave, Randy, and this is my husband, Rick, too.
Hey, Rick.
And it's because of all these people and so many more. We have over 200 staff at Aging Partners, and they're all stellar. People from the van drivers, to our cooks, to, the senior center managers, our services coordinators, our receptionist staff, our care managers. There's so many people that are working every day in such a dedicated manner, and they truly love the people they're serving. They love our communities, and I'm just babbling now. I just want to thank you all very much.
You're not babbling. Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to say one thing too. I have known Sandy for quite a while, and I admire her for all the stuff that she's done. And I'm Pat. I was a friend of somebody that she used to work with.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Have a good day. All right, we'll go back to our regular agenda and take a small deviation again in a moment. In accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted at the back of the chamber. The order of business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on an agenda item should come forward after the clerk has read that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, followed by those in opposition. The applicant then make a short rebuttal statement. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. Each speaker should begin by stating their name, address, and whether they're speaking in favor of or in opposition to the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the City Council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last meeting of the month, immediately prior to the adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for today, nor planned for a future agenda. And before I ask the clerk to call the first item, it was brought to my attention by some of my fellow council members that the local news listed a story that we would be voting on the 33rd and Cornhusker sub-area plan today. At one of our previous meetings, we voted to put that on indefinite pending, and so there will be no public hearing or vote today on the 33rd and Cornhusker sub-area plan. I would like to ask Mr. Feigard from the Railroad Transportation Safety District to come up and help us understand the procedure that we're in as far as public hearing. Where are we in the process?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, Roger Feigard representing the RTSD. Just as you indicated, the sub-area plan was put on indefinite
I had trouble with it too.
Pending. Pending.
There we go.
You'd think after 25 years I could say that, but anyway. So with the sub-area plan on hold, the RTSD project is moving ahead. And in order to select a single preferred alternative, the RTSD will evaluate 4 alignments that we have. And as part of that, there will be continued meetings with the public, with business officers, and we expect 2 additional public meetings over the next 6 months to continue that process. One in the spring, and that would highlight the previous concepts, continue to gather public input on those, and to evaluate the impacts environmentally, socially, economically. The second meeting would be late in the summer to share the preferred alignment with the public and to discuss the environmental design moving forward. We want to stress that public input is important and a significant part of this decision-making process. Likewise, the RTSD would like folks to know that we did put together a news release, an information packet. That information was sent out to all of the stakeholders and folks on our email list. We put out a press release, and we put this information in both the City Council and the County Commissioners' packets to try to let folks know that this had been put on pending. There wouldn't be any action on the sub-area plan. When that single alternative is selected, at that point in time, that's the time I would anticipate that the sub-area plan would be advertised and information and be brought back to the City Council. But at this point, we'll continue to work with the public and move ahead, and I'd certainly try to answer any questions you've got.
Thank you, Mr. Feigard. I think Councilwoman Lamb has a question.
Yeah, I'm just wanting to clarify that when that takes place, then would those same stakeholders be notified that
Absolutely.
now is the time?
And I would guess that we'll even have more stakeholders by the time we get to that point.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the council? So to wrap up, if you came here today to participate in a public hearing for the 33rd and Cornhusker plan, there is no public hearing today. That's on the indefinite pending. When it comes off the indefinite pending, to be put back on our agenda, and there will be a public hearing at that time.
I can stick around outside for a few minutes if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Feiger. Thank you. So, having said that, let's go to our regular agenda.
Okay. We ask those of the general public coming forward to testify to please clearly state your name, spell your name, give your address, and sign in on the sign-in sheet laying on the podium. Testifiers may use either microphone, and there is a sign-in sheet by each microphone. City staff coming forward to testify are asked to state their name, title, and the department you work for. Our first item of business is our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 3.
I see we have some appointments. Ms. Abram, are you here? Yes, please come forward. And Mr. Cooper, you'll be up.
Thank you so much, Mr. President and members of the council. My name is Christine Abraham, Christine, Abraham. I live at 2000 South 23rd Street here in the great city of Lincoln.
Thank you for coming forward. Looks like you're going to be volunteering to serve on a board. Tell us a little bit about your background and why you'd like to serve for us.
Yes, thank you so much. I was so pleased to be asked to do this. Right now, my current position is I work at the League of Nebraska Municipalities. So suffice to say, I love cities of all kinds, and I love city government. But Lincoln has been my home for 30 years, and so I particularly love Lincoln, of course, and I'm very anxious to give back to the community that has given so much to me and my family. I am a lawyer. I graduated with Councilman Eskridge in 1996. I'm going to give our ages out. I apologize. And I've been a lawyer ever since. I've worked with the League for the last about 2.5 years. And in some of my volunteer activities, I have served on personnel boards for both nonprofits and my church.
Excellent. Thank you. Questions from the council? This is your chance to get,
It's tempting. So before you were in Lincoln, where were you?
I grew up in a farm near North Bend, Nebraska.
And North Bend had a basketball team here last weekend.
You dear soul, what a heartbreaking loss it was. Thank you for bringing that good memory up. Yes, but still very proud of them and the season
Absolutely.
they had. So thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah, that was not what I thought he was.
Okay, great.
Ms. Abraham, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
We also have an appointment of Mr. Cooper.
Good afternoon, Council. Jeff Cooper, Jeffrey Cooper, Jeffery, Cooper. I live at 7811 South 33rd Street, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Mr. Cooper, thank you for coming forward. Tell us about your experience and thank you for your willingness to serve, first off. And tell us a little bit about your background.
I've been in the trades since '84, over 35 years. I moved from the South Dakota in '94, moved to Nebraska, lived in Lincoln, Nebraska since '97. Plumbing, fitting all my life. I've worked on large commercial projects, industrial projects, apartment buildings. Been a master plumber since I believe 2000. Otherwise, I was a journeyman. Worked a lot with engineer firms. We've done some big projects here in Lincoln, public schools. Worked for the city as well. Right now, I work for NIFCO Mechanical. I've been there for 5 years. Otherwise, I worked for a prior firm, was Midlands Mechanical for over 27 years.
Wow.
And most of the work has been here in Lincoln.
Wow. Thank you. Questions from the council? Sounds like the man knows his stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the other is, I think we're done with this
That's
portion?
it?
Yep. Testifiers. Oh, thank you. Is anyone else who would like to testify on the consent agenda portion of our agenda? Anyone in the chamber like to speak on these agenda items? All right.
All right, if not, we can vote on these items. Items 1A and B were introduced by Christensen.
So moved. Second?
You have a motion by Councilman Christensen and a second by Councilman Eskridge. Discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Eskridge?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 3A was the setting the hearing date I mentioned earlier, was introduced by Eskridge.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion by Councilman Eskridge, second by Councilwoman Raybold. Discussion? This was an additional agenda item to set a hearing date for a liquor license. Hearing no discussion, would you call the roll, please?
Eskridge?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Next then are public hearing liquor resolutions. Those giving testimony are asked to come forward and raise their right hand for the clerk to administer the oath. After the oath, the witnesses shall state their names and addresses. I'll call items 4A and B together. They're the application of Val Limited, doing business as Valentino's Premier Concessions, for a Class I liquor license at 403 Line Drive, and the related manager application of Anthony Massinio. Raise your right hand.
Yes,
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Anthony Massinio, Anthony Messineo, at 7535 Southampton Road. And thank you, council members, for letting us be here today.
Thank you, Mr. Arsenio. Tell us a little bit about your application. What brings you?
We are here, applicant for, we're taking all food and beverage out at Haymarket Park. So we will be taking over, or applying for a new license out there to handle all food and beverage, and for the liquor portion of that as well.
Excellent. Baseball season is coming.
Yes, hopefully.
Are there questions from the council? Councilman Eskridge.
Yeah, so does Val's know how to do hot dogs?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Other questions from the council? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Our next application?
Next is item 4C, application of Isis Aparicio, doing business as Cielto Mexican Restaurant, for a change of location from 1601 Q Street, Suite D, to 100 North First Street, Suite 1. Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Just state your name and address.
My name is Isis Aparicio, Isaparicio, and address 5421 West Layton Avenue. And I am looking for the change of location from 1601 Q Street, Suite D, to 100 North First Street, Suite 1.
Okay. Councilman Eskridge.
Yes. So my understanding from this is you're just changing locations from downtown to
Yes.
First and Cornhusker.
Yes. it
Right?
is. Mhm.
Okay. Same operation, everything?
Yes, it
Pretty
was
much.
actually my sister had her business there and she shut down. So since it is a better location, I decided to move the one on 16th and Q over to Westo.
Other questions from the council? Would anyone else in the chamber like to testify on this agenda item? Seeing no one coming forward, I'd like to thank you very much for coming forward.
Thank you all.
And Teresa, I'd like to move to the next agenda item.
Next is item 4D, manager application of Will Harris for Intercom Club, doing business as Nebraska Club at 233 South 13th Street, Suite 2000.
Hello.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you. Just state your name and address.
Will Harries, Willherres, and 1212 South Cotner Boulevard.
Mr. Harris, thanks for coming forward. Tell us a little bit about your application.
I'm the executive chef and now general manager of the Nebraska Club. I've been there for the past almost 4 years and have stepped up into that role as executive chef 2 years ago, and recently have taken over as general manager as well.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Questions from the council? Councilwoman Lamb.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. I think that there were some items that were requested that were left off of your original application. And could you just explain why they were left off, what reasoning you had for that?
Some of them are a few items that I had forgotten about that were 12 or 13 years ago. Some of them I had honestly just forgotten about. I had spoke with the detective afterwards about filling that out, and he had told me that it would have been a good idea to run a background check on myself to ensure that I have all those things in place. hindsight's 2020. If I would have known that from the get-go, I would have definitely gone down that route first and foremost. But other than that, I don't really have an excuse, or I wasn't trying to hide anything or anything like that. Just some stuff I had forgotten about.
Well, I did note that it looked like the real important ones were disclosed. I just always, there were some traffic violations and other things that were not. So, okay, thank you. And I believe, am I correct that based on that, there may be a review anyway?
There will be a review with the Liquor Commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions from the council? Do we need some staff to come up and explain the procedure, or are we good to go?
Good.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris. Is there anyone else in the chamber that would like to testify on this agenda item? Seeing no one coming forward, I'd like to have a motion.
I move approval of items 4A through D.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Christensen, a second by Councilwoman Lamb. Discussion, the motion? Seeing no discussion, Teresa, would you call the roll, please?
Eskridge?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Next are public hearing resolutions. I will call items 5A through F together, as they are all placing charter amendments on the May 2019 general election ballot. The first is to repeal Article 4, Section 6, Bond of Councilman, as outdated language. Repealing Article 4, Section 17, Citizen Aid in Law Enforcement, as outdated language. Repealing Article 8, Section 13A, Municipal Coal and Fuel Yard, as outdated language. Repealing Article 9, Section 3F, Auditorium Additional Bond Issue, as outdated language. And to amend Article 9A, Section 8, No Discrimination, Political Activities, to forbid discrimination against a city employee by reason of a protected class status and limiting the political activity of those in city service. And finally, to add a new Article 12 to provide that the language of the city charter is intended to be gender neutral and should be interpreted as such.
Thank you.
Chris Connolly, Acting City Attorney.
Yeah, Don Stating, appearing on behalf of the Charter Review Commission.
Okay.
We hadn't really rehearsed this, so what I will do is I will.
How do you spell your last name?
Stading.
Thank you.
I can quickly review what the charter amendments are basically about, and Mr. Stating, you're certainly welcome to chime in and correct me on anything that I may misstate. And so I guess what I'll do is start talking about the first one, which is 5A, which is bond of a councilman. The commission found that this is surplus language. Bond of a councilman is also already required by state law, and so this language is something that is just not needed. Let me back up to a little bit. I think the genesis of these amendments comes from a meeting that the commission initially had in 2017 and carried forward into 2018, and has resulted in these amendments. There have been a couple of changes to two of them, and we can discuss those as well, but I'll go back to reviewing what they are in general. The second one, 5B, talks about citizen in aid of law enforcement. Again, it's outdated language. We're not in the 1800s anymore, so we don't need to have the mayor or the police chief put a posse together to go round up some people. So we see that as outdated language. Right? We could have up until, well, we still can actually as of this point. So, but we believe that that's outdated language, and so that is being brought forward. 5C, this relates to municipal coal yard and municipal coal and fuel yard. Now, this one originally, as it was brought forward, I do believe had a change in that it included a gas station. There is a gas station in section 13B, I believe it is. Refers to a gas station that the city can operate. The administration felt that it was more appropriate to leave the language concerning the gas station in the charter for now, but that the language with regard to the municipal coal and fuel yard should be removed as outdated. The reason for the gas station is it if there were ever plans for the city to operate a CNG fueling station of some kind, this would give the city authority to operate that. It would still have to be under other ordinances to establish it, but at least this would give general authority for the city to operate such a fueling station. The next one, 5D, is it talks about a general election ballot that repeals essentially what was the bond issue for Pershing Auditorium. And since that was long ago decided and Pershing was built, there just isn't any need to have this language in the charter. It does not affect any of the bond issues that are currently outstanding, so there's no reason for that language to continue. Now, the next one, 5E, is where there was some change in the language as drafted by the commission. This relates to Section 8, no discrimination on political activities, to forbid discrimination against a city employee by reason of a protected class status and limiting the political activity of those in the city service. All right, so there's a couple of things that are happening here. One is basically a political affiliation issue. First, the commission came through with some language that would remove most of it, but they also took out a reference to a political affiliation.
Correct.
And when these matters came to the law department after they were issued by the commission, we were looking at these, and in the last few weeks, we kind of came to the conclusion that in order to maintain our status and be compliant with state and federal law, we felt that the term political affiliation needed to be added back to the charter so that there wasn't going to be adverse activity against someone based on political affiliation and not just political opinion as had been originally written. So that was one change on that particular amendment. The rest of it deals with situations involving city resources and the actions of elected officials and city employees. And this is something that has come to our recent attention because we've been working on the city sales tax issue, and is something that is important for us to make sure we communicate to the elected officials as to what they can do and what city employees are allowed to do. And essentially the rule is that anyone, a city employee cannot use public resources to advocate for any kind of a political issue or anything that's on the ballot. They can't use their time, though, either. You, as elected officials, are allowed to use your time, but you still cannot use city resources to advocate for or against a bond issue or any kind of a ballot issue. So we read the language that was originally proposed by the commission, and we saw that it could be interpreted in multiple ways. And so, and one of those is because of the fact that the charter refers to people in the city service. And all of you as elected officials are in the city service, just as I am in the city service as an employee. I'm in a classified position, you're all in an unclassified position. But Chapter 2.76 of the Lincoln Municipal Code still holds all of you as elected officials, as well as board members, as being in the city service. And so when it talks about not being in the city service and using city resources, we felt like that there was a need for a change in the language to clarify what it is that that elected officials can do versus what city employees can do. And so that's the reason for the change that is reflected there. Now, the last one then talks about the gender neutral clause. We didn't have any problem with the language, however, we moved it to its own section. We felt that from an organizational standpoint that it made more sense, but we weren't changing the meaning or the impact of what the gender neutral language would be. And so that's kind of a quick overview with it. Mr. Stading, I don't know if you have further comments?
And no, I would concur with what you've stated. And also there's a nice write-up in page A3 of the Lincoln Journal of today. In an interview I discussed with this lady that wrote the article. She does a very nice job describing it, similar to what you've done. And we'd like to recognize the contributions of Jim Froman. He's the one that looks at the charter completely and came forth with these recommendations, which we now recommend to the city council.
Thank you. Questions, Councilwoman Raybold?
Mr. Standing, it seems like, well, let me ask you this. In all of these changes, did your committee review and approve the language? And then it seems like, I believe there were some changes to 5E. Did the Charter Revision Commission have a chance to review those changes? And did they concur that, I guess, the clarification in 5E made sense, or they were in support of it?
I can just state from the record, I think we met, and don't quote me on the dates, late in 2017, reviewed them as recommendations from Mr. Froman. We worked with the city attorney, Mr. Kirkpatrick, and went through those, and then we felt that there were numerous items, so we had a subcommittee meet in January and go through those items, and then we built the language and everything else that we did from that, took it back to the committee, and then had them vote on it, and here today. But your question is, with the subsequent changes from the, as I understand it, with the subsequent changes from recommended by the city law department, have they had a chance to re-review that? No. And I don't think it's necessary because it's obvious, I think, and constructive.
So I
think it relays the purpose for which we agreed to change, recommend the change, and so voted.
So I guess to sum up, it accurately reflects the intent of the Charter Revision Commission with the language that was used.
In my opinion, it does.
I would also state that I believe that while they did not have a meeting, I believe that the changes that we made were communicated to all the commission members and also to Mr. Froman as well.
Right.
Prior, a week to 10 days ago. I'm not sure of the exact timing.
So have you heard anything back from them? Did they have any concerns? Did they object? Did they say, no, I prefer this language?
We got two communications back. One was asking if we had sent these to Mr. Froman. We had not at that point, so we did forward those on. And the other question was with regard to the language on the ballot itself, the yes and no language. And it was determined there wasn't really anything we could do with it at that time, and it wasn't something that the commission had taken up anyway. So it wasn't with regard to the issues that the commission worked with or that we made changes on.
So in particular, 5E, they did not have any concerns when you notified them that this is the language that was crafted?
From commission members, they had no issues coming back from commission members.
Okay, thank you.
I had no feedback either.
Okay.
Councilwoman Lamb?
Yeah, thank you. So I've been to a couple of commission meetings, and I know that the city attorney, they draft the language, they bring it forward, and certainly they explain any changes to the language. Usually that's what happens in the meetings. And I do have a concern with not reviewing what is 5E. When the commission reviewed it, they kept the original no person in the city service except elected officials. So it addressed what you had said, that although we were city service, it accepted city officials from this prohibition, and they added only on city time or with city resources, which I presume was to protect the political freedom of those in city services. Now, what's been proposed now changes that nearly completely, because it now says no elected official may use resources. So basically what it's done, instead of making an exception for the elected officials, now it includes the elected officials, and I don't believe that impact has been certainly explained because there hasn't been another revision commission meeting since these. The other thing, sir, is that as I look at the proposal from the subcommittee, I noticed that in the second part, beginning with section 1 about prohibited activities, there were a number of those. Items 1 through 3, 1 through 2 were totally eliminated, and then I presume number 3 became number 1. And now those have all been added back in. So I have some concerns with this going forward with those kind of substantial changes without the Revision Commission having seen them and certainly been able to discuss and with the city attorney and so forth. What I relate about what happens at the commission meetings, is that is that still accurate that you get the city attorney presents to you what the impact of the language is when you guys have changes and so forth?
Well, I think, in my opinion, it goes through a process. Obviously, it's something that's discussed. There's a vote or statements to the effect of how do you feel about this changes, and then that goes back to the law department. They come back with the language, we review it, and then either pass it or not pass it. Mm-hmm. And we're simply making recommendations to you. It's your decision, obviously.
Right. And the recommendation, as I understood it by your commission, was to keep the language, no person in the city service except elected officials and members of election boards and unpaid advisory boards, et cetera. Keep that original language, but make sure that you added on city time or with city resources in order to help preserve the freedom for political activity for people in city services. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions from the council? I'm a little confused at the moment. So where?
I don't know either. Are you recommending that you not take that?
Public testimony.
Yeah, I agree with that part. So her questions were.
I just want to make clear that that my impression that this substantially changed that change in language and the process, as we talked about, being so important, that this one we may want to delay unless so that can be explored more thoroughly by the commission to make sure that is their intention at this point, since it seems to change something that accepts public officials or elected officials, and now it actually addresses elected officials.
We wouldn't be adverse to that. Obviously, what they were trying to do is clarify the situation. And in fact, for it to miss this vote and go on to the next one.
How many members of the commission are there?
12, 13?
I think 15 is what the code calls for. I guess I haven't counted up how many are on there currently.
So I appreciate you saying that you wouldn't be adverse to it, and maybe you wouldn't, but the reality is that you're one of 12.
Well, if you're concerned that, in fact, it's not a valid recommendation, I think the only answer is take it back. Take it back to the committee and have them rehash it.
Okay.
We haven't received any negative feedback, which to me indicated that it's okay, because however way you word it, accomplished the purpose that they were trying to clarify. That's why I said it was okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Other questions from the council? Councilman Escrow.
Just a question for Chris. We need to act on this to get it on the May ballot today. Is that right?
That's correct. Our deadline is March 18th.
Okay.
Thank you. Other questions from the council? Thank you both, gentlemen, for your testimony. Is there others in the chamber that would like to speak on this agenda item?
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs of Lincoln Government. Why is this coming now at the last minute, and you already have two important votes on the ballot coming up, and it just looks like you're trying to confuse people who may not have time to think about all of this, to look through and try it. It's been around for a long time, and so we say just scrap the whole thing and wait till the next election to do that, when they will come up in a separate time and not paired, an addition, whatever you want to call it, with the two important ones that are coming up. I don't think it's fair to the public. I don't think it's fair to push it here when they've been around for a long time. And actually, if the entire commission needs to look at it, and has in the past, then we say go ahead and do that.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsey. Mr. Way?
Hello, my name's Robert Way, ROBERTWAY, 801 Elevado Avenue, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Welcome.
I have concerns about the process which were just expressed. the idea that we're going to have charter amendments and we're going to combine them all and we're going to have 5 minutes of public comment. I don't understand how that process got to it. I understand that there's a mayoral process for this, but in my experience, that's not widely known amongst the citizens of this city. And maybe I'm wrong. If I am, I hope somebody will correct me. But I think a lot of Nebraskan Lincolnites read about this for the first time when they saw it in the Lincoln Journal-Star. Most of these, I think, are good ideas, and they reflect the nature of good citizen involvement. I do take exception, despite the chance of ridicule, about removing the power of some sort of basically draft power for the mayor. Some members of this board have been in the military. They understand when you have a primary, a secondary, and an emergency frequency. Just because you go 60 years without ever using your emergency frequency doesn't mean we don't need it. I believe this building has fire sprinklers. I don't think they've ever been used. Doesn't mean they're not needed. There are certain things that confront us. For example, recently the city dealt with hiring a cyber security specialist. If the city were hit with a massive power outage that took down all electricity, which is a threat which has been explained by The Perfect Weapon by, let me get the name, the New York Times writer David Sanger. It's also been referred several times by the National Intelligence when they review our weaknesses as a nation. We don't know when fire sprinklers might be necessary. We don't know what the future holds. So occasionally you have to keep things that we hope will never, ever be used. But what if you had a widespread tragic event? What's the plan then? You got a bunch of people who probably have the best idea, like the chief of police, on how to deal with these things, but there's no obligation for anybody to listen to them. So I think we should consider maybe holding off on that amendment. I thank you for your time, and I hope you have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Way. Are there others in the chamber that would like to testify on this agenda item? These agenda items, excuse me.
Hello, my name is Jim Froman, Jimfrohman.
Welcome, Mr. Froman.
And I live at 7335 Pioneers Boulevard, apartment 212, Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm here to testify in favor of resolutions 5A through 5D and 5F, and in opposition to 5E. First, I'd like to commend the Charter Revision Commission for the work they've done over the past 2 years. They have reviewed, discussed, and voted on some very important issues related to the Charter and done so in an open and professional manner. Resolution 51 through 54, 5A through 5D are outdated sections of the Charter and should be removed. It's pretty straightforward, it's cleanup. Resolution 56, while not actually changing the current male-oriented language in the Charter, will declare that the Charter is meant to be gender neutral and should be interpreted as such while the actual language is updated over time. This is an important statement that belongs in the Charter and that I support. Resolution 55, or 5E, has multiple issues. First of all, as already has been stated, was not approved by the Charter Revision Commission as written. The administration should have presented this approved language to the commission approved language to the body for review. If the law department wanted to change the language, they should have brought those forward as an amendment or as a separate resolution. The presentation of this resolution has been seriously mishandled. The resolution in front of you is a bit of a mess. The sentence starting on line 21 is difficult to interpret. No elected official may use public resources to support or oppose a candidate or ballot issue. If the sentence stopped there, it would be a duplicate of the next sentence, and it would be very clear. But the sentence continues. Except an elected official's time is not considered a public resource. This is a problem. It effectively allows any elected official at any time to advocate for anything as long as it is just their time they are using. For example, any of you could walk out to the sidewalk in front of this building and, according to this amendment, advocate for anything you want, oppose or for. You're only using your time, you're not using any public resource. I would advise against that because there are other laws and so forth that tell you you can't do that. But according to this amendment, you're free to do so. It's confusing, it's conflicting, it's a mess, as I said. It should be removed, that sentence should be removed. The whole sentence should be removed. The next sentence is more than adequate, and it is more reflective of what was approved by the Charter Revision Commission. The current charter language actually prohibits the actions outlined in activities 1 and 2 on page 2. The proposed language allows these activities as long as you don't use public resource, which is an improvement, frankly. But some of that language was not adjusted in terms of what those activities are, and depending on how you read that language, it is still potentially very confusing and can be interpreted in multiple ways. It was not done and was not cleaned up in a proper manner. Because of that, I do not support this resolution and suggest that it be returned back to the Charter Revision Commission for further review. Finally, there was a 7th item approved by the charter, and it was alluded to by the gentleman previously, and that actually was where the gas station was referred to. It was not embedded in the coal language issue. It was actually a separate change and a separate part of the charter. I believe that the administration violated city ordinance by not bringing that in front of you. The ordinance says "and." The Charter Commission refers to both the mayor and the council. By not bringing that information in front of you, they violated the ordinance, did not give you an ability to review that option that was approved 11-0 by the commission. Again, it was mishandled inappropriately. You should have had a chance to review that change that was made by the Charter Commission. And it was, in fact, the co-chair of the commission did, in a very small comment that easily could have been overlooked, said that he would have liked everything to be presented to you. So that's my statement, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Froman. Questions? Councilman Christensen.
So what action would you recommend we take today in those items where you had an objection?
Vote them down or postpone them, whatever is appropriate. Return them back to the Charter Commission, basically.
Other questions from the council? Councilwoman Lamb.
So, and I understand that about 5E. You're not necessarily recommending that we turn back to the Charter Revision Commission, the ones that are dealing with outdated, and the last one that you said?
Correct. The four I'm supporting, the first four, and the last one for gender or equality or general neutral language I recommend an approval vote on those.
And then as far as the omission, and I understand what you're saying, we actually have never, as a council, gotten a report from the Revision Commission. Do you know how many times they've met since 2017?
I believe Mr. indicated it was 3 times that the full board group has met.
Okay.
They met before that too, and then there was also a subcommittee.
Yeah. So clearly we couldn't, you're not suggesting we put back on what they suggested back in July as far as the gas station. You're suggesting that we just let them know it should be presented.
Well, at this point, I think it's too late to bring that forward unless somebody wanted to make an amendment of some sort. But more than likely, that's going to have to be dealt with as whenever the commission meets again later this year.
Okay.
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Froman? Mr. Froman, thank you very much for coming forward. Are there others in the chamber that would like to testify on this agenda item? Mr. Conley, Mr. Standing, would you like to have rebuttal time on this agenda item?
We can certainly re-meet and rediscuss any of this that there's a question. Obviously, the timing was an important thing to be able to get it on the ballot, and so I think you can present both arguments, as Mr. Froman has, as the city attorney has, with regard to that change. I'm an attorney myself. I practice every day. I would not necessarily go along with his interpretation, but that's why we have judges. You know, so, and in this case, you're the judge. You're deciding whether you think it wants to go forward in this fashion or not. And if there's any question, my recommendation is it doesn't go forward.
So,
yes, Councilwoman Lamb.
Thank you. The recommendations that you guys have been considering these since 2017. Was that accurate?
Yes,
okay.
Well, for the record, we met, I think, in July, and then
I'm showing July 12th. Oh no, I'm sorry, that was 18 when the recommendations came out.
Yeah, it started off on July. Yeah, we met in August of 2017, January of 2018, with that subcommittee, came back and on the committee with July 12th, and here we are.
Okay. Thank you. And so do you have another meeting scheduled?
Not to my knowledge. I'll have to check with the city attorney's office.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm not aware that one's been scheduled.
And they have to meet just once a year, is that?
I think that's the minimum.
Right, okay. So they will meet sometime in 2019?
I believe so.
Okay.
We have good cooperation and good attendance, so we can call it about whenever we need to.
I would agree with that. When I went to the meetings in 2017, so I would agree with that.
Councilwoman Raybould has some questions, then you have a rebuttal. Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I just want to come to some understanding about what the Charter Revision Commission was indicating, particularly for the one that Mr. Froman had some questions on, that 5E. I guess, was that the intent of the commission to come up with clarifying language so that it's more than adequately clear, not only to those in the employment of the city services, but also the elected officials, that we can't use public resources in a capacity of campaigning for any issue or cause, but we can use our time. I mean, did I summarize that? I mean, is that the intent of the Charter Revision Commission? And I guess I'm not concerned about the exact wording, because that's why we have a legal team to come up with further refinement or even further clarification. But does it meet the intent of what the Charter Revision Commission was trying to get at?
As I recall, the discussions were concerning the fact that we have continuously people in elected positions, and as a result of that, I use as a hypothetical example, can the mayor run around to see all the department heads and saying, you know, I need contributions for my upcoming re-election or something like that? And so we had to try to differentiate between their role as an employee or a city service person versus a public person with their rights to be able to campaign for public office. And we were trying to differentiate so the two didn't come together at the place of employment.
So in your opinion, do you think the language that was cleaned up and revised since the Charter Revision Commission met accomplished that?
Well, I argue about interpretations of language daily, so you can always take it from this angle or that angle. I think it clearly stated, no, I should say this, it states the purpose for which we were trying to accomplish it. Could it be more clearly stated? It's all in the drafter.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Mr. Conley.
I just, first of all, I want to thank Mr. Froman and any others that participated that were not actually a member of the commission. Their hard work and their ideas are obviously well appreciated and were listened to, really, by the commission. However, what I would tell you is that you as elected officials, you are allowed to go out and stand out off the city property and advocate for or against any any position that's on a ballot. I mean, you're entitled to do that. That's the changes that we made were based on state law. That's what we were working from, including consultations, not specifically with regard to this, but the whole issue of what elected officials could do in consultation with the Accountability and Disclosure Commission. So we were working not only ourselves, but with the people that understand these laws. So that's why we came up with this.
My only point would be that if you're confused by it, I think the voting public may also have questions and be confused by it. So, and we'll have to try to rework something that's more direct or something, but it's, because we want them to be able to know what they're voting for or against.
Other questions? Thank you both. That ends the resolution section. Now we get to vote on this stuff, right?
Yes. So item 5A is amending or placing a charter amendment on the general election ballot, repealing Article 4, Section 6, Bond of Councilman as outdated language, introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Christensen, second by Eskridge. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. 5B is repealing Article 4, Section 17, Citizen Aid in Law Enforcement as outdated language, introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Christensen, second by Eskridge. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. 5C is repealing Article 8, Section 13A, Municipal Coal and Fuel Yard as outdated language, introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Christensen, second by Eskridge. Discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Eskridge?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. 5D is amending Article 9A, Section 8, No Discrimination, Political Activities, introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
We
No,
skipped
that's
5D.
five.
5D.
5D.
I'm sorry,
5D.
5D is repealing Article 9, Section 3F, Auditorium Additional
That's
Bond
better.
Issue. Okay. Introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Christensen, second by Eskridge. Discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Eskridge?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Now 5E is amending Article 9A, Section 8, No Discrimination, Political Activities, introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Christensen, second by Eskridge. Discussion? Councilwoman Lamb.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to put this on pending until after the Charter Revision Commission has had an opportunity to meet again and consider this and any other changes in language that might make this, clarify this. If I can get a second?
Second.
Motion by
So this
Lamb,
is
second
just
by
placed on
Christensen.
pending, no date certain.
Yes, and for purposes of discussion, so I too am an attorney, and that we do, there's no doubt about it, we look at different interpretations. But to me, this first, the no person in the city service except elected officials and members of election boards and unpaid advisory boards and commissions shall engage in the following activities is how it originally read. The Charter Revision Commission added in between no person in city service on city time or with city resources, which indicates to me that they're actually trying to protect the political participation of people in city service outside of city time and outside of city resources. The way that this now reads is that no elected official may use public resources to support or oppose a candidate. And then it goes on to talk about the city service, people in city services. And I think that is confusing enough because that conveys to me two completely different intents, and I don't know which it was. While I appreciate Mr. Stadling being here to tell us, obviously with 12 members of the commission, I think that needs to be more clear to them. In addition, the commission had suggested that we strike out two complete sections that are have not been struck out of what's been put before us. And so I think that at this point in time that I would ask that we put this on permanent pending until after the Charter Revision Commission is able to see it. They've been working on it since 2017, and to tell us now that we're just seeing it when it has to be passed today to go on the ballot does seem extremely rushed. And I don't think there's any need for putting something on the ballot that's going to be, that's not going to have the intent of the Revision Commission without at least hearing from the Commission.
Councilman Christensen.
That was really long, and that confused,
I know, I'm sorry.
And that confused me.
I'm sorry.
So, no, just kidding. I'm not confused. What I will say is I think this needs to go back to the Charter Commission so it can be approved by the Charter Commission before it comes back to us. So all the language in there has been through the process. So I'm going to vote yes on your delay.
So we have a motion and a second, and on delay, is there other comments from the council?
Who seconded?
Mr. Christensen.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Conley, could you help me with procedure? If I have I'll stop talking till you get there, and then I'll ask my question.
Okay.
This is before us today, so we can vote to put it on the ballot in May.
Correct.
If we put it on pending, when would it come up again? Will we have to take it off pending, or would it automatically come up during our next election cycle? Or the Charter Commission doesn't have a scheduled meeting date. Where do we go from here?
Well, you would certainly want to have the commission meet. However, the next opportunity to vote on this probably won't be until November of 2020.
Councilwoman Raybould.
For clarification, what is the current policy regarding the employees of the city or elected officials? I mean, the intent was to clarify it.
Yeah, I mean, the state law is that city employees, such as myself, cannot use city time, my time during the day, or city resources to advocate for or against a ballot measure. Elected officials are considered in the city service, but you are entitled to have your opinion and state that opinion during city time. And that's one of the things that state law talks about, is that your time as elected officials is not considered a city resource. Okay, so you're not violating the law by going out down the street at a restaurant and saying, vote for this, that, or the other thing. If you were to stay inside the building here and go back to your offices and get on a city phone and start making phone calls asking people to vote for or against something, now you're using city resources, and you cannot do that.
So basically, if we vote to delay this, those rules, those regulations are in full force as we go through this election cycle.
That is correct. And the biggest thing that could happen is if for some reason there was a challenge to the language in the charter, it may or may not lead to confusion. It would just depend on how it plays out in that kind of litigation. But it hasn't been brought up, to my knowledge, ever. Certainly not in my time here with the city. So I can't tell you that there's any kind of a high risk that there will be litigation if nothing is done today.
Councilwoman Lamb?
Thank you. So before next November, though, there is an election, an election in May of 2020. So if the commission meets this year, it's possible it could go on.
It's possible, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're right. I did say November. It could be. Yes, that's right. It would be. I guess it would be the spring of 2020.
Okay. Thank you.
Right.
Other questions? Thank you very much for your help. So we currently have a motion and a second and some discussion on delaying, but placing this item on pending, no date certain.
Correct.
Any additional discussion? I think we should call the roll on agenda item 5E.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold? Yes. Schob?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Motion to place on pending carries 5-0. Item 5F then is adding a new Article 12 to provide that the language of the city charter is intended to be gender neutral, introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Christensen, second by Eskridge. Discussion? Gender neutral language? Call the roll, please.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Council, if you'll allow me, can we go back to 5E for just a moment? We motion to put that on pending. Do we need to add additional instructions encouraging the Charter Commission and the legal counsel to get together? Or do we need to do anything else with that?
I think that was
I think what we
clear.
do is we wait until they meet, they bring it back to us, and then we vote to bring it back on the agenda.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you very much. I have a better understanding now, and I think we've put that on the record now that that's what's going on. Thank you very much.
All right, next is our public hearing ordinances second reading. Item 6A is amending section 2.76.380 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to sick leave with pay to add language to clarify the payout provisions upon retirement or death for employees in pay ranges prefixed by the letter A or C, and amending section 2.76.387 regarding bereavement leave.
Good afternoon, Council. Doug McDaniel, Human Resources. The change to Lincoln Municipal Code here presented to you is merely to bring code in concert with the negotiated contract with LCEA that was passed this last fall. So it merely brings the two documents into concurrence and compliance.
Thank you, Mr. McDaniel. Questions? Thank you very much. Teresa, 6B, please.
Next is 6B, Text Amendment 19001, application of Olson Associates and Rimbold Lutke to amend sections 27.51.030 and 27.51.090 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to the minimum total district size requirement for property zoned as I-3 Employment Center District.
I'm sorry, I was trying to stifle a cough, and I didn't ask if there was anyone in the audience that wanted to testify on the public hearing portion of 6A. Got lucky. Now, thank you very much for your patience with me.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Mark Falson, F-A-H-L-E-S-O-N, 1128 Lincoln Mall, Suite 300, Lincoln, Nebraska. I appear today on behalf of our client, P3SP LLC, in support of Ordinance 19-21 and the proposed text amendment. Our client is the owner and developer of property along 84th Street on the west side of the road near Havelock Avenue. And the project will include an expansion of its existing warehouse, office space, test kitchen, and retail space relating to the Lone Creek Cattle Company and Great Plains Beef, which is a producer and a procurer of certified Piedmontese beef. And so again, this text amendment would allow us to, this property to be zoned I-3, which currently has a total required minimum acreage of 50 acres, would reduce that to 30. It received a 7-0 recommendation, unanimous recommendation from the Planning Commission. I believe we have the co-sponsor as well of the, just so happened.
First, or you?
Well, so could council members be invited from time to the test kitchen?
Oh, absolutely, but you know, we don't want you to talk politics there because it may violate a charter amendment or something like that, but yes, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Brad Marshall with Olson, 601 P Street, Suite 200. As Mark indicated, we actually had a similar application the same date for a project that I am representing, Stonebridge Creek LLC, that is bringing forward a change of zone. Is in the process with the planning department right now on property that is at 27th and I-80. And we're rezoning the property with a B2 PUD, and the adjacent parcel that is currently zoned I-3 is currently about 30 acres as well. And working with staff, we do believe that this is an appropriate thing to move forward and change the text to 30 acres, and it would have the adjacent parcel untouched as well, and we wouldn't have to do anything there. So.
In all, if I could add one thing, city staff has been phenomenal to work with on this process, Mike Lang in particular. So again, huge kudos to helping us kind of cut through some of the normal red tape to be able to create hopefully a project that's going to bring jobs to Lincoln and be a nice addition, especially to Northeast Lincoln.
Yay.
Yeah,
questions from the council? Yeah. I see no questions from the council.
Thank you
both. And I'll get the public hearing portion right this time. Is there anyone in the chamber that would like to speak on this agenda item? Seeing no one coming forward.
That concludes our public hearing. We'll move into the voting session. Ordinance's third reading. Item 7A is the real estate sales agreement between the city and 4B Kybla LLC for the sale of city-owned property at 534 North 27th Street, introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Raybold, second by Eskridge. Discussion. I'm going to start with Councilman Christensen, then come to Councilman Eskridge.
Well, I have had some feedback from some constituent and brought up a good question of why is the city using government funds to subsidize a business acquiring a piece of property, whereas there may be some understanding of a housing project where there's a home that needs to be renovated or torn down or rebuilt. That's understandable, but why offering a preferential treatment to a business? And so, in its essence, subsidizing a business. So that was brought up, and I thought I'd bring that to the council and let you know that there was that feedback from the public.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Eskridge.
Yes, thank you. And I heard the same thing that Councilman Christensen heard. In this particular instance, the area is North 27th Street, an area that has been a business district, is a TIF district, and has experienced really pretty remarkable change and revitalization. It's an area that's kind of on the rebound, and so the urban development actually looked at how to help that momentum keep going, and in this instance thought that this particular use, a bakery, provided more life than some other uses, that maybe business storage or things that would not bring the same kind of vitality to the community. So there's a price, a value to it. If we felt strongly enough that it should go to the high bidder, we could make that decision, but I think this is the best thing for the neighborhood.
Thank you, Councilman. Other comments from the council? Councilwoman Raybold.
I don't know if it's possible to ask a question of staff at this time.
Be possible, yes. Which staff
Dave,
would you like?
Mr. Landis, could you come forward and tell us a little bit more about the other alternative proposals that were given for this parcel of land that may have offered a higher amount, but I guess as Councilman Eskridge mentioned, that we're trying to achieve a compatibility and encourage the synergy and of the development that we see along the North 27th corridor.
I'm going to subtract the one that wanted to use it for the parking lot for $2,000.
Okay, fair enough.
The other users were for one, a tire location that wanted additional space for those. And I didn't bring it up before, but we were helpful in moving from where they were to where they are now, and that is an improvement. When we left, we found hundreds of tires in the back, filled with rainwater, and we didn't forget that. But the other user was for a spec building, unclear as to exactly how they were going to use it, but they had had success in the Mexican grocery store and the building that they had created. That was allowed because we in fact sold them the land to do that, so we've done some good work on that score. The absence of a clear set of what the building was going to be used for and the lack of clarity as to when that would happen were parts of the reason that we thought we know what we're getting. It is a wholesale operation that will hopefully bring money into the city with the different multiplier that means. And it has a quick turnaround, which means the growth in valuation will be immediate upon the conclusion of the building, which will be begun in 6 months. So to have a spec building for one certain and an uncertain time, and a clear schedule for which they were committed, and it would be much sooner than we would estimate, and as yet undesigned building might be, and that the use there were both local and not wholesale were elements that went into that. It is also not lost on us that our best partner in the area is the 27th Street Business Association, who we reviewed all of these tombs, and they said, we think that's the best contribution to the business climate in the area. Those were our reasons.
So I guess it's not a consistent city policy that you don't always offer or take the best offer on a certain parcel. You look at the contributing factors on what it'll do for that business community and
if you were to review the RFPs and the IFRPs that we've issued, for example, let's say Pershing. We don't promise to take the high bid on Pershing. We promise in that we will do business with what we regard as the highest civic value. Which means there are times when perhaps we think the use, the timeline, its compatibility, its design may be not as great as a different project. And we've been writing in those explicitly this concept that says we're looking for civic value. Price is certainly significant. It's not the only determinant of value. It's why you get the big money, isn't it?
Councilwoman Lamb has some questions before you.
So as I understood it, the none of the offers came close to what it cost to purchase the property and tear down the building. Isn't that correct? Is that right?
Oh, absolutely.
And I remember the tire shop, North 27th, of course, is in my district. And I'm presuming the city had some cost involved in removing those tires. So, on the other hand, this bakery will, as we said, first thing it'll do is it'll put it back on the tax rolls.
It will.
And then
and it'll put it back on the tax rolls more quickly because they'll be building. That makes a difference as well.
Yeah. And he'll be conducting business, and that business will generate sales tax, and on and on and on.
And hire people.
And hire people.
In fact, they estimate hiring 6 people.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Other questions?
Looking for work.
You're looking for work. Going down. Other comments from the council? Hearing none, and I think we're ready to proceed.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Motion carried, 5-0. Item 7B is amending Chapter 12.08 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to parks, general rules and regulations with various amendments. Introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Raybold, second by Eskridge. Discussion. Hearing, nope, sorry. Yeah. Councilman Christensen. Yes.
There's always a little bit of controversy when we talk about adding the ability to have liquor licenses, or in this case, special designated licenses, to an area where they have not been permitted in the past. And some people have suggested to me that we're just going to increase the consumption of alcohol everywhere. And I'd like to assure the public before we vote that that is not the case. It's pretty clear that even when we allow these kind of activities for good charitable causes, like the zoo, that alcohol consumption in the city does not increase. It remains fairly steady, and people just drink in different locations. And this is a location where I can point to and say, people are going to be drinking responsibly at these places, so I'm going to support this.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Eskridge.
Yes, thanks. And also, I think we need to add that alcohol is not going to be served during hours when the zoo is open, so that there won't be alcohol and little kids running around at the zoo at the same time. This is for special events.
Thank you. Other comments from the council? Thank you very much. I think we have a motion and second, and we're ready for the roll call.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Motion carried, 5-0. Resolutions on first reading are items 8A through F, and ordinance's first reading is just one item, 9A. Our pending list are items 11A through E.
And that puts
Anyone
us
wishing to address the council on a matter not on this agenda and not plan to appear on a future agenda may do so at this time, since it is an open microphone session.
Ms. Kinsey, he was buddy. Hi, welcome to public comment. You understand the rules are you have 5 minutes to speak. I will give you a 1 minute warning when you have 1 minute remaining. And welcome to the City Council public comment portion.
Do I need to repeat my information?
It'd be nice if you did, yes.
Just state your name.
Robert Way. Thank you, council people. Last night and just breaking in the newspapers today and with other business on your mind, I doubt you've had a chance to review it. There's some exceedingly troubling reports of, well, amongst other, there's all sorts of stuff. I'm not going to name who's accused, or the person's already admitted that they made these posts during the last election cycle. But the thing that is probably of most concern to the City Council and to the government in general is admissions of threats to LGBTQ rallies. And a person who is Breasts 222 stated, "When I was a young punk, my friend and I threw eggs at LGBT rally and ran away. Now I would do that it's not my fault, it's a terrible word, unironically," which I don't think is a word. But basically, he's now, he followed that up on June 25th, 2018 with frag raids and all fag parades all summer 2018. And then he said, yeah, I can't even read that one. That there are terrible thoughts expressed by citizens is something we can never stop. People are free to have any opinion they want. But we have what is commonly referred to as the Overton window. We have a certain amount of things that we will accept in public discourse. And when that is violated, when things that no one will accept has become part of the public discourse, and these people have achieved levels of extreme importance in our political system, we need to figure out how that happened, why it happened, and how we can keep it from happening again. Like I said, this broke last night. It hit the Lincoln Journal-Star a couple hours ago. I don't want to name names, or I would like to give the parties involved, and I think us as a political climate, a chance to come together and figure out how best to make sure this never happens again. But if that does not happen, there were 3,000 of these comments. And if we cannot figure out a way to stop it, we must at least put it in the public record. We cannot pretend that certain comments can be ignored, that we can accept certain things from people because it's convenient or politically expedient. We have to keep this out. And we can't only do it on Twitter. We can't only do it on Facebook. We have to do it where we have the ability and the authority to do it, which is when we have a chance to address our government.
1 minute.
That'll be it.
Thank you, Mr. Way. Would others like to address the City Council during our public comment portion?
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs of Lincoln Government, and today we're going to state that we will do everything we can to defeat the sales tax ballot. And the following are reasons why. The whole proposal is bogus way to get more money instead of managing the taxpayers' money that you already have. So residential streets are taken care of. Too much financial devotion is to the Haymarket, not to taxpayers in the east and west sides of town. I drove down here on Capitol Parkway. After A Street, no potholes. You go to the east and you will find many potholes. And as far as taking care of those immediately or when notified, that's also not happening. The idea of non-residents paying for streets with sales tax receipts will only continue due to the loss of retail, so you're not really going to get more sales tax. A deal with the developers is a slap in the face to ordinary citizens. It's a good old boy system, too much in this town, and that's a flagrant episode of this happening. You want the taxpayers to pick it up rather than developers. There's no guarantee if the vote passes that it'll be spent as promised. 2 times people have voted for issues, and the taxpayers have been flummoxed, and money from those issues has been used on other city desires. The bond, 2 examples are the bond for the arena, which broadened to the Haymarket, and the upgrade for 9/11 and the fire station was broadened to buy fire trucks. These are lies to the voter. Presently, you have asked taxpayers to vote on a stormwater bond issue. This in addition to the increase to taxpayers that you want for the additional sale tax. You know, what do you think people are made of? You already have the money from the property taxes. This is ridiculous. It is not looking out for the taxpayer. You're looking out for developers. You're looking out for the city leaders who are not managing money appropriately. This is going over and over again. The city leaders and the way that you also vote is not in the interest of the taxpayer. You give away the TIF to wealthy developers who have inappropriately used the TIF for decorative purposes, and the intent of the TIF law was not to do that. The sales tax hurts low income the most, and it goes against the present efforts to enhance
1 minute
the lifestyle of low-income people in Lincoln. So you're not working with that group either. In short, leaders, including you, should spend money more wisely with all Lincolnites in mind, and not just with the wealthy people, developers, and whoever can line the city pockets the most.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsey. Would anyone else like to speak use the public comment portion to speak to City Council? Von Bushes? Millers. Okay.
I move adjournment.
Second?
Have a motion by Councilman Christensen, second by Councilwoman Raybold, that we adjourn. There is no discussion on that part.
Can't be.
How about we have a roll call?
Eskridge?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Motion carried, 5-0.
I declare this meeting adjourned.